Good morning, 12th standard students. Today in our class, we'll study about the transmission control protocol or an internet protocol. These are basically and very commonly known as TCP/IPs. These are the very useful protocol for connecting computers and to establish a network of a computer. So, what a transmission control protocol is? It is These are the two distinct computer network protocol. The internet work by using a protocol called TCP/IP or Transmission Control Protocol is the underlying communication language of the Internet. In base terms, TCP/IP allows one computer to talk to another computer via the Internet through compiling packets of data and sending them to right location. TCP or IP is very essential for connecting the computers, as I have said, and it is not possible to create a computer network without following these protocols. And what a protocol is? The literal meaning of protocol is set of rules. We need to abide by some rules so that computer can understand the requirements and the basic functionality so that the data that one computer is sending to another can be done smoothly, and it can be done only if the followed protocols like TCP and IP is followed properly. In the TCP, as the name suggests, transmission control protocol. So this is a protocol that will control the transmission of a data from one computer to another. Now let's study further that how does it perform. That TCP layer handle the message part. The message is broken down into smaller units called packets, which are the transmitted over the network. Means a data as a whole cannot be transmitted in a network. How does it transfer? It it is broken into smaller different parts which are called packets, and then according to the bandwidth of a network, according to the speed of a network, those packets are transferred from the source computer to the destination. The data uh, from where it is moving is called a source computer. The computer which is sending a data is called a source computer, and where the data is being received is called the destination computer. I have made a note on TCP/IP where you can see that a TCP or a transmission control protocol is a standard that defines how to establish and maintain a network conversation. Network conversation means sending and receiving of a data. The transmission control protocol is a transport protocol that is used on top of IP to ensure reliable transmission of packets. TCP includes mechanism to solve many of the problems that arise from packet-based messaging, such as lost packets, out-of-order packets, duplicate packets, and corrupted packets. Since TCP is the protocol used most commonly on top of Internet Protocol, the Internet Protocol stack is sometimes referred to as TCP/IP. So these terms are usually referred together, TCP over IP, because IP is the main protocol, Internet Protocol, over which this TCP works. And Internet Protocol address or IP address is a numerical label assigned to each device connected to a computer network that uses the Internet Protocol for communication. An IP address serves two main functions: host or network interface identification and locating address. It means TCP makes sure that the data, once moved out of a computer or a source computer, must reach its destination correctly. And for that, it needs the address of the destination computer And IP or IP addressing of the computer make sure that all the address of this individual destination computer have a unique addresses, and it makes easier for a TCP or the communication protocol to make sure that it is sending the data to the correct computer. So IP addressing is very important when this network computer network uh, is called or discussed. So IP part sees the addressing of the computer, and TCP sees the route, the routing of the data, or the movement of a data from the senders to the receivers. Now for that we need to understand the IP addressing part. So an IP addressing, an internet protocol address, is a numerical label assigned to each device connected to a computer network that uses the internet protocol for communication. Each Every machine working over the network has a unique number assigned to it, which means no other machine can have same IP address over the network. So just like our addresses, when we get a mail from the senders, this data in a network also follow the same protocol. Like for this, we need to have a unique address for each and every computer so that the data of one computer should not be delivered to another. So the each addressing of a computer is taken care by this IP addressing. So without an IP address, our machine would not be able to communicate over the internet. An IP address is a 32-bit number that identifies a computer on the internet. So the IP address, when we talk about an IP address, so it is a 32-bit number, and these bits are divided into four sections referred to as an octet. Each contain 8 bits. So 4 octets of 8 bits is equals to 32 bit. And we have two internet protocol versions, two types: internet protocol version 4 and internet protocol version 6. So right now we are studying about IPv4. So what the internet protocol version 4 is, it uses 32-bit IP address mechanism, which means that it can have 2 power 32, which makes a 4,294,967,296. So these many computers, like these many addresses we can have in IP version 4. So these addresses are in the form of dotted decimal. Just an example, 192.68.10.2, that makes it a class V IP address, and we can also follow it as in binary, as this binary numbers of 1 and zeros, and this is 4, again an octet, 4 octets of 8 bits. Continuing further, we have a classes of IP addresses. There are two. The IP addresses are divided into two parts. The first is network ID and the next is host ID. So what a network ID is, the network ID identifies the network to which IP address belongs. It is assigned by the Internet Network Information Center. Like just I'm giving an example of a simple mail, that the area where we reside is an example of a network. Like particular area is a network, and the house number and the flat number or the villa number is the host ID. Same way, there are so many networks, and to recognize those network, we have a network ID. That makes easier for a TCP to send the data to the exit computer. And host ID, host identifies host on the specified network. It is assigned by the local network administrator. And under the network ID, we have a host ID. So host ID is a particular computer, and it could be a MAC address or a IP address of a computer to which the data has to be delivered. And it is assigned and maintained by the network administrator. Internet protocol hierarchy contains several classes of IP addresses. Now we are talking about the different IP address classes, and they are used efficiently in various situations as per the requirement of host per network broadly. The IP version 4 addressing system is divided into 5 classes of IP addresses. All the 5 classes are identified by the first octet of IP addresses, and these classes are class A, class B, class C, class D, and class E. Whereas this class D and E are very rarely used, and these are used for research works or very high profile and very complicated tasks. And normally the classes we use are class A, B, or C, and class C is the most common IP address um, class. So class C is mostly commonly used. For your reference, here I have made a note on the IP version 4. The IP version 4 address is a 32-bit number that uniquely identifies a network interface on a system, as explained in how IP addresses apply to network interfaces. An IP version 4 address is written in decimal digits, dividing into 4 8-bit fields that are separated by periods. Each 8-bit field representing a byte of IP version 4 address. This form of representing the bytes of an IP version 4 address is often referred to as a dotted decimal formats. And this is an example how a IP is given. And it is always in 4 octet 172.16.50.56 is a class B IP addressing, and this is how we recognize and differentiate between the network part and the host part. So the first 172.16 is the network part, and 50.56 is the host part. Here 172.16 is a registered IP version 4 network number. In class-based IP version 4 notation, this number also defines the IP network class. Class B in this example that would have been registered by IANA. So the full form of IANA is Internet Assigned Numbers Authority. And the second part, which is 50.56, the next part of IP address is 50.56. Host part of IP version 4 address. The host part uniquely identifies an interface on a system on a network. Note that for each interface on a local network, the network part of address is the same, but the host path must be different. So this is what about we studied about the IP addressing system, and we will continue studying more and more about this IP addresses and transmission control protocol in our forthcoming videos. So study well and keep safe. Thank you very much.